Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. In today's video, I'm going to give you guys my post-week 3 power rankings. As usual, I'm going to tell you my bottom 3 teams, I'll give you my top 10 teams, and we'll talk about a couple of honorable mentions on either side of the spectrum. But there's a lot to get into, so let's not waste any time, and let's jump right in. Let's kick it off with my bottom 3 teams as it stands after week 3 in the NFL. And coming in at what would be number 30 overall, third bottom, is going to be the Carolina Panthers. They're 0-3 on this season, and this team is just incredibly devoid of talent. It's just one of those things where it's going to take the Carolina Panthers at minimum, a couple years before they're realistically competitive. Now, I do think Bryce Young is a solid young quarterback. He's looked okay at times. It's just a team that doesn't have any real weapons. I mean, Thielen's getting older. DJ Chark should be like a number 4 receiver for your team. Not much, weapons at tight end. The offensive line is a major issue, so he's not put in the best situation. But I do think Bryce Young could very well be a good quarterback in the NFL. Defensively, they have some names, Brian Burns, but here's the thing. Is Brian Burns going to sign a long-term deal in Carolina? Do they contemplate trading him away for a first-round pick because they don't have theirs for the trade-up for Bryce Young? Derek Brown, J.C. Horn, so they have some names, but they're still a long ways away. And it's just one of those things where they're not playing great. They're not playing awful. I thought they put up a decent fight in Seattle with Andy Dalton at quarterback, but this team, it needs a lot of work. Now, moving on to number 31 overall in the rankings, second from the bottom, and that's the Denver Broncos. Also 0-3, and to give up 70 points in an NFL game is almost unheard of. Like, the Dolphins really could have broken the record for the most points scored if they wanted to. The Broncos just look awful. Russell Wilson, the one positive is Russell Wilson looks a little bit better than last year, at least statistically that is, but this team is a mess. Sean Payton, he criticized Nathaniel Hackett before the season, and his team is looking worse than it did last year, you could very well argue. And the defense, they've poured money into it. They have some names as well, but they're just playing really badly, and I just don't like what's going on in Denver. All you got to do is ask Brandon Perna, That's Good Sports, and just watch his videos, and you'll see the disaster that the Denver Broncos are. They also lost to the Raiders, which is just really bad. But to lose by 50, that's not good, to say the least. And now coming in at number 32, my worst team in the NFL, believe it or not, it's not the Denver Broncos, it's the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears came into 2023, and they had a lot of confidence. There was a lot of talk about the Chicago Bears as being a playoff team, taking over the NFC North, but none of that has happened. The defense has looked awful. Justin Fields, even worse. Their run game is kind of non-existent. Why they're not using Roschon Johnson a little bit more, I don't know. The coaching staff is coming under fire. Luke Getsy is not a popular man in Chicago. Matt Eberflus, what's going to happen there? And the Chicago Bears are just a nightmare. We all know what happened. Alan Williams, he resigned as defensive coordinator. We're not sure the details necessarily surrounding that, but it doesn't sound good. And nothing good is coming out of Chicago right now regarding the Chicago Bears. They just look like an absolute disaster. I don't see them turning it around this year. Justin Fields not looking like the guy at all. Some really, really bad plays. And this season has really blown up in the Chicago Bears' face. The one positive, if you're a Bears fan, though, that you can look forward to maybe is that after this year, you have your number one, your first round pick, which is going to be high. You have the Carolina Panthers first round pick, which is also going to be really high. So maybe you move on from Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, then you could maybe draft offensive linemen, draft a weapon for Williams, who knows. But at least you have the draft next year to look forward to, and they should have some cap space to work with. But Chicago Bears look really, really bad. Now, just before we head on to our top 10 teams, let's give some honorable mentions or dishonorable mentions for teams that could have been down here. Minnesota Vikings 0-3. They lost a crucial game to the 0-2 Chargers, and they're not looking good at all. The New York Jets, now they obviously had so much hope coming into the season with Aaron Rodgers. He gets hurt. Zach Wilson has looked worse than Justin Fields. He's looked awful. And that quarterback class from 2020 is just, it's not looking good. 2021. It's not looking good at all. Trey Lance traded to the Cowboys. He's QB3 in Dallas. Zach Wilson, not looking good. Justin Fields, not looking good. Mac Jones is looking okay-ish. Trevor Lawrence, definitely the quarterback from that class who's stood out. But even this year, he's struggling. So one more team I have to mention, though, as a dishonorable mention, is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders. Jimmy Garoppolo, not looking good at all there. Thrown 6 interceptions in 3 games. The team just looks like a nightmare. Outside of Max Crosby and Devontae Adams, I just don't know where they're going. Josh Jacobs not having nearly the same kind of year he had last year, so a lot going on wrong in Sin City. But there you have it, guys. You have my bottom 3 teams and some dishonorable mentions down there. But coming up next, guys, I'm going to have some honorable mentions for the top 10, and then, of course, also my top 10 teams in the NFL post Week 3. Next up, guys, we're going to have my top 10 teams. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my teams from 10 to 5. Then we'll mention the honorable mentions, and then we're going to give you my top 5. So coming in at number 10 in my power rankings, I have the Baltimore Ravens. Now, look, the Ravens just had a really bad home loss against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, maybe it's a case where the Colts are a little bit better than we expected coming into the season. That could absolutely be the case. Look, the Baltimore Ravens, they are ravaged with injuries on the offensive line, offensive weapons, all over the defense. So they're up against it this year. The one positive, Lamar Jackson, he looks really good running the ball. Against the Colts, looked okay passing it. I think they will get better as they get some of their guys back and get some guys healthy. You know, Odell Beckham hasn't been very healthy. Rashad Bateman, the same thing. Another positive rookie, Zay Flowers, he's looked really good. They have Mark Andrews back, and it was an overtime loss to the Colts, so it wasn't like they lost badly. Still a bad loss for where I think the Ravens want to be. But right now I have the Ravens coming in at number 10. The defense is pretty good. Kyle Hamilton, wow, he's just looked amazing. 3 sacks against the Colts. That's just insane coming from a safety. But overall, number 10 for the Ravens. Now coming in at number 9, I have the Green Bay Packers. The Packers got a really big come-from-behind win at home against the New Orleans Saints. Now that could be in part, due to Derek Carr. He got injured in that game. Jameis Winston came in, looked okay, not really effective. They wouldn't have game planned for having Winston out there, obviously. But overall, you have to like what you're seeing out of Green Bay. I think a lot of Green Bay fans, you look at guys like Tom Grossi, the Cheesehead TV crew. Coming into the year, I think they were all very realistic. They're hoping that Jordan Love can look good. They do have weapons, but they've looked better than I thought, for sure. Jordan Love has looked really solid. Didn't play great against New Orleans, but that is a very good defense for the Saints. The run game looks really good. They're getting Aaron Jones back. Some of these weapons are stepping up. Christian Watson should be coming back soon. Offensive line has been okay, but their defense has been really solid. We know some of their big name guys, Kenny Clark, Jair Alexander, but some other guys are also stepping up. And you have Rashawn Gary, who's looked really good. Kingsley Enagbare has looked okay. I think the Packers are moving in the right direction. Jordan Love, are we saying that he's a franchise quarterback guaranteed? I don't know, but he's definitely looked better than maybe I thought and maybe some Packers fans thought. So I think the future is looking pretty bright in Green Bay. They have a really good coaching staff in place, and I do think that they're going to be competing all year long for the title in the NFC North. Now moving in and coming in at number 8. Also an NFC North team, we have the Detroit Lions. Now the Lions got a really, really big win against an up-and-coming Atlanta Falcons team. That Falcons offense is loaded with talent. Questionably at the quarterback position, Desmond Ridder, but you look at Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Kyle Pitts. They have some really solid receivers there too with Drake London and, Cordero Patterson. But they shut them down. They only give up 6 points, 2 field goals. The Lions offense looked good enough. Defensively as well, Aiden Hutchinson, he's looking like a menace. Their linebackers looking good. Anzalone, I thought, had a really solid game against Atlanta. Jack Campbell, the rookie linebacker, had a good game. And the offense is going to get it going. Really good OC and Ben Johnson in Detroit, and I just like what the Lions are doing. They finally got Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit more involved in the running game, thanks in part to the injuries at running back, but I think Gibbs is going to be a good weapon. They have, Amon-Ra St. Brown, man, that guy is a beast. And come to think of it too, in a few weeks, in another 3-4 weeks, you're going to have Jameson Williams coming back from his suspension. So the offense should take another leap forward. But I do like the Lions, and I think it's going to be Lions, Packers all year long in the NFC North. And I believe they are playing on Thursday Night Football. So that is basically must-watch TV for any NFL fan. Now coming in at number 7, I have the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys went from what would have been my number 1 team down to number 7. You lose badly to the Arizona Cardinals. That was an ugly game, and I just don't know where to go with the Dallas Cowboys. I still think they're a very good team, and I still think, look, that's why I have them at number 7 in the power rankings. I think Prescott's going to play better than what he did. Tony Pollard's going to look better than what he did against Arizona, but there are some serious question marks here. The Arizona Cardinals were able to exploit a weakness in the Cowboy defense, and that was through outside runs. James Conner all game long, running outside of his tackles, out either side. He had a lot of success, and that Cowboys defense looked pretty iffy in the run game. That's something that come week 5, us 49er fans, we're going to look at and see Kyle Shanahan, no question, is going to try and dial up a bunch of different plays to get to the outside and try and exploit that weakness too. But overall, the Cowboys got to play better. Just not good enough to lose to the Arizona Cardinals. And maybe the Cardinals are just a much better team than we all expected. They had 2 close games to start the season. They beat the Dallas Cowboys. Who knows? But the Dallas Cowboys, they got a lot to fix. They were missing, look, granted, they were missing 3 guys on their offensive line, which I think really helped out the Arizona defense. Prescott, Dak, he was under pressure a lot of this game. But I do think the Cowboys will bounce back. I think they'll look better once they get, Tyler Biadasz and they get Zach Martin and Tyron Smith back out there. I think they'll go back to where they were, probably being a top 5 team in the NFL. Now coming in at number 6, I have the Cleveland Browns. Now, don't look now, but the Browns have the best defense in the NFL. As a team, they've given up 32 points, but some of those weren't even on the defense. There was against Pittsburgh. There was it a fumble return or an interception return for a touchdown? This defense has played insane, and they have so many talented players. Myles Garrett, of course, Zadarius Smith, JOK at linebacker, Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, Grant Delpit, like all these guys, Greg Newsome, like they are so deep. They probably have, in my opinion, arguably the best secondary in the NFL, and they're just playing lights out. And the big thing for them is, look, they lost Nick Chubb, and that's a devastating loss. And I think over the course of the season, you'll see those effects. But right now, Deshaun Watson, he played a really solid game against the Tennessee Titans. That's going to build confidence moving forward. If they can really just find a run game, whether it's with Jerome Ford or Pierre Strong, watch out for the Browns because they could be in for a big-time season in a very tough, competitive AFC North. Now, before we get into my top 5 teams, let me give you some honorable mentions. I only have a couple right here, and they're both from the NFC South. I have the Atlanta Falcons and the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints, they're 2-1 on the season. They very well could have been 3-0. Derek Carr, he gets hurt. They lose to the Packers. That's a tough loss. The Atlanta Falcons looked really good week 1 and week 2. Tough loss on the road against Detroit. They really got to figure out the offense, get the offense playing a little bit better, maybe try and make things a little bit easier for Desmond Ridder. But overall, I think those are 2 very good teams, along with Tampa Bay in that division. That should be a fun, competitive division. I don't think it's necessarily the best or even near the best division in football, but it should be competitive all the way through week 18. Now coming up next, guys, I'm going to have my top 5 in the power rankings post week 3. Alrighty, and coming in at number 5 in my power rankings, I have the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills, the last 2 weeks have been insanely good. We know what happened week 1. That was just a nightmare opening week. Crazy things happened. Josh Allen looked terrible week 1, but since then, look what the Buffalo Bills have done. They've outscored opponents 75-13 the last 2 weeks. Now, I know what you might say. Look at their opponents, the Las Vegas Raiders and the Washington Commanders, and that's not great. But they still won both of those games absolutely in dominating fashion. 75-13 at combined score the last 2 weeks is that's insane numbers right there. Josh Allen looking like he does, looking a lot better, looking like vintage Josh Allen. The defense clearly has stepped up, only 13 points. And look, the Commanders, they were putting up points with Sam Howell. They obliterated Sam Howell. 4 interceptions. and Hal just couldn't do anything, couldn't get anything going. They really shut down Jimmy Garoppolo after the very first drive of the game. So when you think about it, for the last 7.5 quarters, the Buffalo Bills have given up 6 points, which is remarkable. So the Bills absolutely deserving, back in the top 5. You start getting all these guys like Von Miller back and all these things, and the Buffalo Bills are going to be a really tough team. And they're going to be battling it out in the division with a team who's coming up a little bit later in these power rankings. I think you guys will know what team I'm talking about. But Bills looking really, really good and strong again. Now, coming in at number 4 in my power rankings, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, look, the Kansas City Chiefs, week 1, bad loss at home against the Detroit Lions. They didn't have Chris Jones. They didn't have Travis Kelce. We know all that. The last 2 weeks, they've looked better, and especially on Sunday, dominating a bad Chicago Bears team at home. But that's what you want to see. You want to see that was like 41-10. They were able to bring in Blaine Gabbert in the third quarter. Mahomes looked great. Travis Kelce looked really good. I know we all know that Taylor Swift thinks he looks good. The offense looked a lot better, but here's the thing too, the defense has really kicked it up a notch. Week 2, they shut down Trevor Lawrence. Week 3, they shut down a very desperate Chicago Bears team that does have some weapons. Like the Bears, we saw they're my worst team in the NFL, but they do have some weapons where they could put up points. But the Chiefs shut that down since they got Chris Jones, since they signed him. The defense has played way, way better. So I expect the Chiefs to continue their winning ways. And suddenly that division is not a good division. I think we kind of talked about the AFC West and the last couple of years, I think maybe it's been a bit overrated. You look at the Chargers, they're struggling. They got a win, but they're struggling. The Raiders are kind of a mess. The Broncos are absolutely a mess. So the Chiefs should pretty much walk away with that division. It's going to be some of those key AFC matchups throughout the regular season, which will really determine the seeding there. But Chiefs getting back to winning ways, and I expect that to continue moving forward. Now coming in at number 3, we're going to have the Miami Dolphins. I mean, what can you say about that win against the Broncos? 70-20. I just think about 70-20, and they were all touchdowns, 10 touchdowns. Raheem Mostert had a bunch, Achane had a bunch, Tua throwing touchdowns, and this was all without Jalen Waddle. This Miami Dolphins team is just speed, speed, speed. You look at all those guys, and you have Tyreek Hill, another great game. You have Waddle coming back. You have the running backs who were just lightning quick, and it's going to be incredibly difficult to slow down the Miami Dolphins. The defense is playing much better football too. You have Vic Fangio at defensive coordinator. I think they're going to get better as the season goes on, as they get more accustomed to playing in that scheme. Later down the road in the season, they're going to get Jalen Ramsey back, so that's a move. And I could see the Miami Dolphins being a team that makes an in-season trade, because this could be their year to just kind of maybe push the chips and go all in. They are in a tough division with the Buffalo Bills. That's going to be like those games this year. That's going to be just must-watch TV as well. I can't wait to see the Dolphins play the Bills 2 times. And it's just awesome. Great football. Tua's looked amazing so far this year. I have him in fantasy, so hell yeah. But the Dolphins going to be a tough team to stop offensively. And if their defense just keeps improving, they probably are the number 1 team, and I have them right now as the number 1 team in the AFC. Now looking at number 2 overall in my power rankings, and it's the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles, like the 49ers, who I think we all know are going to be number 1 now, 3-0 on the year. One of the few teams, same as the Dolphins. Dolphins also 3-0. They've looked really good, really solid, I would say. They haven't had their massive blowout win. Like, they beat the Buccaneers fairly handily, and the Buccaneers are a solid team this year. They beat the Vikings on Thursday Night Football. You look at week 1, they were able to beat the Patriots in New England. Not an easy thing to do necessarily, especially when Belichick has all that time to prepare for the Eagles. The one concern is Jalen Hurts, throwing it, at least statistically, hasn't looked the same on the year. 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. That's not great. DeAndre Swift, getting him, he's been amazing so far for the Eagles. So the run game is really good. You know that Hurts is probably going to turn it around, become a little bit more efficient. And they have weapons across the board. The offensive line is really good. It really helps too when Lane Johnson can, false start every single down. But the defense has stepped up as well. They have playmakers. Jalen Carter, the rookie, he's played great. I think this Eagles team is absolutely formidable. I know as 49er fans, we've all circled on the calendar Later on in the season, the 49ers travel to Philadelphia. That could be the deciding factor as who gets the number 1 seed in the NFC. But Eagles, arguably the most talented roster right there with the 49ers, and they're playing good. I think they're going to start playing better as the season goes on. But watch out, Philadelphia, 3-0. And that division's suddenly not great. You know, the Commanders, I think, are going to come back to earth. The Giants haven't looked good, and the Cowboys just lost a bad game in Arizona. And now, guys, number 1 in the rankings, we all know who it is. It's the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the San Francisco 49ers, it's just consistency is key. We've scored 30 points in all 3 games so far. 2 of the 3 games we won in dominating fashion. The other game against the Rams, you look at the scoreline 30-23, and the first half in that game was really close. It was tied at halftime against the Rams week 2. The Niners really just got away in the second half. And overall, I think the Niners just looking like just the most well-rounded team. Brock Purdy has looked really good, hasn't thrown an interception yet. Hopefully, I'm not jinxing him. I'm going to knock on wood here. The run game, McCaffrey might still be leading the NFL in terms of rushing yards. If not leading, he's going to be right up there. Receivers, they didn't have Brandon Ayuk week 3. He should be back week 4 against the Cardinals. So the weapons are just insane. Debo looking like Debo Samuel, I don't want to say quite 2021 level, but he's looking damn good. Kittle finally getting involved in the passing game. And then the defense has played just phenomenally well. Outside of, the first half against the Rams, where the Rams had a really good game plan, this Niners defense has been dominant. Nick Bosa getting a ton of pressures. The entire defensive line getting a ton of pressures. It hasn't necessarily resulted in the sack numbers that you'd like to see, but sometimes getting pressures can be almost or just as good as sacks if you can force the quarterbacks into bad mistakes. Even just force them to throw it away, it's a loss of down. And I think the defense has stepped up. The linebackers have looked really good, of course, with the best linebacking core in the NFL. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw. Greenlaw needs to rein it in a little bit with those unnecessary roughness penalties. I don't like that. Hopefully he can rein that in. And then the secondaries looked great. Diamador Lenore has really, really stepped up. We saw Mooney Ward's played great. Hufanga's looking really good. Gibson's playing well. And I just like where this team is. Special teams has also been really solid. Jake Moody hasn't missed a field goal all year. So to me, the 49ers are arguably the most talented roster in the NFL. And they're just playing overall, I think, top to bottom. They're just playing the best football right now. Of course, it's going to be very easy to say, oh, I'm a Niner fan, I'm biased. You could make arguments for other teams to be above them, but I just think the Niners right now are the best team in the NFL. You get Brandon Ayuk back, this coming week, and the offense should be rolling. The defense is looking great. For the Niners, don't be surprised because the Niners have a ton of cap space. Now, I do think they want to keep a lot of that cap space for next year because, big contracts and whatnot coming up, but I could see the Niners doing a mid-season trade, maybe for a cornerback just to get some depth there, maybe for a right tackle, although McKivitz struggled in the run game last week against the Giants, but was actually much better in pass protection. But I do think you look for the Niners, and the Niners do love making their mid-season trades. Look for that to happen again. Could they potentially look into maybe like a J.C. Horn, who Steve Wilks coached in Carolina, something like that, just throwing out a name right there. Could the Niners look into adding to the secondary depth? But Isaiah Oliver, to me, he's looked a lot better too, and that was a big question mark coming into the year. Overall, though, Niners top to bottom, best team in the NFL. No surprises there. But thank you very much, guys, for checking out my power rankings. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, whether you agree with me, whether you disagree with me, where you think I went right, where you think I went wrong, all of that good stuff. Love to have the interactions on these power ranking videos. And also, guys, if you enjoy the content, do drop a like on the video. Feel free to share it on social media. That really helps out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're going to be going live this Sunday. It's going to be 49ers hosting the Arizona Cardinals in Levi's Stadium. But that's going to be it, guys. And before I head out, I'm going to say 2 things. And that's the butt counts. And I'll catch you guys on the flip side.